Um, and we can start with announcements probably too. I think everyone here generally knows each other. If you want to introduce yourself though, go ahead. Marie, why don't you get us kicked off?
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Marie Fargo. If I haven't chatted with you before, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Instructional Resources Coordinator at Climate Generation. Um, I guess my big announcement is that we're having our Summer Institute for Climate Change Education next week. It starts on 15th and runs, we have two concurrent day sessions, 15th and 16th, and then there are cohort days led by folks like CLEAN and a few others in this room. And so we're very excited to get that started. We're busy. I'm feeling a little scattered, but yeah, we're looking forward to that event. We technically have closed registration, but if you have anyone in your networks who you're like, this would they'd really benefit, this would be a perfect fit, feel free to send them to us and we can chat about that. So I will pass it to anyone who's feeling ready to share. Yeah, James.
Yes, thanks, Marie. So let's see, just announcing, we're now doing the full preparation for multiple schools where climate change is taught all year round, a class all year round. So we're looking at getting guest speakers lined up, or more like they're not so much speakers as they come in and interact with the students. The students will be teaching climate change to lower grades. Don, I'll direct message you, but we hope to get a couple hard copies of teacher-friendly guide because we want to definitely use it, and it just helps, as teachers, it helps to actually have some, paper forms of the book on things to go on. So that goes on with everything. If there's, we want people to know that's going on, that we have those, and we're also, I guess we could announce that I think we're beginning to find where the other schools are that are doing that across the country. So this idea that teachers can only do 2 hours or 10 hours a year, maybe some can, but others are going about as far as, I don't think we were going to want to do a whole lot more than a full year. The schools can't afford to do that. Um, so that's what I got. Thanks.
A boring silence. I will introduce myself quickly. I think I know almost everybody. I'm Don Haas. I'm the director of teacher programming at the Paleontological Research Institution and a colleague of Ingrid's. And I suggested that today we talk about soft climate denial in educational resources. And I will pass it off to Ingrid.
Yes, Ingrid Zabel. I'm the Climate Change Education Manager at PRI. Uh, so I work at a natural history museum, a nature center, and online content development. My work tends to be quite locally focused, generally here in Tompkins County, New York, and central New York. And I will pass it to Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn. I'm with the CLEAN Institute, which is a climate education advocacy organization in Florida. I'm in the Tallahassee office, and we are currently mobilizing around yet another distressing development from our state government. Where basically the governor is and the Department of Education are not approving textbooks that explicitly talk about climate change and human factors. I just dropped an article in here, but we're going to be putting together sort of a action alert to send some like a signed letter from as many folks as possible to our Department of Education. So if any of y'all are in Florida, I'll probably post that on the CLEAN listserv later this week because that's horrifying. Oh, sorry. I use she her pronouns and Pete, have you done it?
Me, Anne? I'll go. So I'm Ann Henderson, and I am Director of Education at FAU Pine Jog Environmental Education Center. So I kind of oversee a lot of the programs that we teach here on environmental issues and so forth. And one thing that, well, I'll let Rachel talk about what's coming up. I don't want to steal her thunder because she's actually the program coordinator of that program. So anyway, that's it. That's all about me.
I'll go next then. I'm Rachel Wellman, Program Coordinator at FAU Pine Jog Environmental Education Center, leading the Climate Ready program. And we have our fourth cohort. That took me a minute. Starting in just 2 weeks. So very exciting. We have 21 students. They are high school, dual enrolled with FAU. And so they are getting college credit as well as high school credit. And it's going to be an exciting week in just a couple of weeks. So how about Pete?
Pete, have you gone yet? Do you want to jump in? Okay. Wendy, I see you're unmuted, so how about you go ahead? Thank you.
Thanks. I was trying this on my phone and finding the unmute. That might be maybe Pete too. I don't know. I could not find the button on my phone. I'm Wendy Johnson. I'm a science education specialist with the National Center for Science Education. I don't think I have any new updates to share. So I will pass it. Pete, are you able to unmute? It's usually at the bottom, except for on the phone. Apparently you have to click at the top first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. So my name is Pete Suchman. I'm a retired science teacher. I taught for 40 years in Great Neck on Long Island. I'm working with several environmental groups, and I'm working on a book, Environmental Activism for High School Students. And I'm working with Michael Lynn with ecoactus.org and all sorts of wonderful projects here on Long Island. And I welcome any contributions to the book that would be of use to creating sustainability programs in high schools and getting high school kids involved in petitions and letter writing campaigns and so forth. I'll put my contact information. Actually, my contact information is in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I'm wondering if, I don't know if some folks that are on the call are calling in with their phones, but I'm wondering if anyone on the phone wants to unmute and introduce themselves. No? Okay. Also, feel free if you're on the phone, I'm not sure if you have access to the chat or not, but feel free to unmute and introduce or put your info in the chat. I just like to know who's in the room for security purposes and that kind of thing. So just let me know. And then let's see, Leah is I see she has her camera on, so I'll call on her next.
Got off another meeting. Are we just introducing ourselves?
Yeah, sorry. Just
Oh.
introductions, and if you have any announcements that you want to share too, feel free.
Okay. So Leah Lowry, the Climate Initiative, and I make it when I can. I usually am very meeting heavy on Tuesdays, but yeah, no big announcements today, but getting ready for our educator retreat. I think that starts the first week in August here in Maine. So excited for that.
And I see Emily and Christy have their cameras off, so I don't know if they might be multitasking. Um, oh, there's Christy. I don't know if you want to say hi, Christy.
Hi, everybody. Sorry that I'm a little bit late this morning. It's good to see you all. I am at the University of Alaska Fairbanks Traffietta campus. And I am going to be transitioning at the end of this month over to the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, but I'm still involved with GLOBE, and I'm getting ready for next week, which is the GLOBE annual meeting. GLOBE stands for Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment. And last March, I was super honored to be an educator on a tall ship between Japan and Palau with 20 young people from 13 different countries. And one of those alumna is going to be presenting with me next week. And it's super refreshing that there was zero climate denial whatsoever with the people from these 13 countries. And they all had amazing ideas for climate adaptation and action. And then I also got to tour a sailboat that runs on coconut oil and solar power, of course, wind. So, and that was in Palau. Palau is also a place where there's the Palau Pledge. I got to meet the people who started the Palau Pledge, which is when you go visit that country, you sign in your passport that you're going to respect indigenous knowledge there, and you're going to respect the environment, and you actually read it and you sign that you've read it, and you're educated about climate change and environmental ethics. So how cool was that? I came back really inspired.
That sounds amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Christy. I didn't know. I've heard of the Palau Pledge, but I wasn't sure what it entailed, so that's really interesting.
I'll put a couple links in the chat.
Cool. Emily, you look like you're ready to jump in.
I am, thanks. I had to get myself situated. Hi, everyone. Emily Snowd-Brenneman. I use she, her pronouns. I am the program specialist and exhibit manager for the UCAR Center for Science Education based in Boulder, Colorado. We create Earth system science resources for K-12 and what we like to say K through gray. And we also do some programming at our visitor center as well. And I didn't know, Gina, have you shared the link to our AGU session yet? I was just gonna.
I haven't yet. That's okay. That would be great. I haven't. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to, for this group, there is a AGU session about sharing climate. If you have anything about climate games and gamification of climate and how you're introducing that to different audiences, we have a session at AGU that would love some folks to submit some session proposals. So I will put the link in the chat, and please, I encourage you to share it with those that you think might have great things to share with the larger community. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you. Yeah, I did not have that pulled up. Thank you. Frank, would you like to do a little introduction announcement sharing if you have any? Frank, can you hear me? Oh. Okay. I see that Reb also joined. Oh, Frank's getting set up. Reb, are you multitasking or want to introduce yourself at all?
Hi, Gina. Hi, everyone. Happy summer. It's good to see you all. Reb Anderson, she, her pronouns, Senior Head of Education and Research at ACE, Action for the Climate Emergency. I don't have any specific updates right now. It's just tuning in. Don, I appreciate your idea for our conversation today. So thought I'd join in.
Frank, can you do a test? Hold on. I'm not hearing anything, so dang.
Frank static for a moment, but
Yeah.
Frank. And can the person on the phone say hello? The 703 area code. Irritating static. Get a buzz. Maybe if you left the meeting and came back in, maybe.
I'm
So-
gonna, oh, sorry, Don. I'm not sure who's on the 703 number, but I'm actually gonna I'm just a little bit nervous about security. So I'm actually gonna oh, I'm gonna put the 703 number in the waiting room. And if you can unmute or anything, let us know. But I'm just a little nervous about security. So.
Frank, you're still static. Use your phone to dial in and mute yourself so you stop hearing the static. All right. So I suggested that we talk about soft climate denial in curriculum materials and extracurricular materials, I guess. It seems like it's been kind of a theme for me running up against this stuff so far in 2024. And I actually sent a note to the science curriculum person at New Visions yesterday afternoon, but haven't heard back yet. But more or less, I tried to politely say, we need to talk about this, and it's not cool. I've spent a fair amount of time looking through the New Visions stuff, and I didn't find anywhere in many pages a mention of coal, oil, or natural gas. Fossil fuels only appeared, the term fossil fuels only appeared when it was citing the standard. And the phenomenon that they used to hook, yeah, I'll put a link in the chat. The phenomenon that they used to hook high school students was the Younger Dryas, which I thought, I find that kind of interesting. But I think there's more natural interest within high school students, and they're more interested in things that are, let's say, more pressing. So I'll put a link in first to the sort of what I think is the main unit plan. And I will also note my computer's being a little quirky. But there is one of the unit plans addressing climate change in the earth science unit. And let me get you to the page with all the curriculum as well.
Don, who is this organization?
So New Visions for Public Schools is a multi-million-dollar organization based in New York City.
Oh, I
It's
see
been
it.
around decades, and they have funding from Bill and Melinda Gates and New York City Public Schools, and they have 5 sponsors, or five funding sources that are each over $1 million a year, but they do a lot more than just curriculum stuff. They actually run some schools. Yeah, thanks, Reb. That's their homepage. Oh, and I copied but failed to paste in. Yeah, put curriculum page. This, and my computer's being quirky and driving me a little nuts, so hopefully I'll last through the call. There's any one of those home pages has the different curricula, science curricula at the top of the page, and you can click around from there and look at it. So they've been around for more than 20 years, and I know they've done some pretty good stuff on problem-based learning and some new visions for public schools. And they are really trying to change some things with public schools in, I think, generally positive ways, but their climate curriculum does not make me happy. So if you look at that first link that I put in there, maybe I already said that it, it doesn't mention coal, oil, or natural gas. It doesn't. The title of the topic is, or the unit rather, is. This computer's going to drive me crazy. Is climate change through human history, but it doesn't really talk about how humans are changing the climate. Jim, you've got your hand up. I was hoping to hear someone's voice.
Yeah, sure. So really important topic you're bringing up, Don. And I want to defer on others what they think about this of like how big a frame do we want to make here? Because I think it's one that we can cover many other times. I'm okay if it narrows down to this particular. I'm okay if it broadens out, but I just want to acknowledge the general frame that I would see it is, first of all, what is being taught that goes under the frame of climate in schools? When people think climate's being covered or energy being covered, what's being taught? And then particularly within that, where it is like saying, oh, we're teaching about climate, but you really aren't. In terms of you're not getting into climate change, you're not looking at the cause of it. What are all the manifestations it has? I would say by the vast majority of the schools that I encountered, that's what's going on. There is in California, in places where the policy is we teach climate, then you look at what's being taught. It's not teaching about climate change. It's going on. So this is a great example. But so how big a frame do we want to make it? I'm good with it.
And a bit more context that I forgot to mention. I don't remember if I put it in the email or not, but this coming year is New York high schools is the first time that the assessments will actually be based on the NGSS. So teachers are working this summer to change their curriculum, and it's actually just in earth science and biology for next year. Physics and chemistry will come the year after, and actually schools have the option to delay a year and stay on the old curriculum for one more year. But New York City is going citywide and adopting the new curriculum for earth science and biology. So I'm really worried that teachers will go out looking for NGSS aligned stuff, which New Visions claims to be, and find this. And there's been a lot of discussion about that exactly on the active teacher listservs for earth science and biology teachers. And I have not yet chimed in to say there's a problem with New Visions, but I'm intending to, but I'd like to talk to their curriculum person before, or their curriculum people before I would rather stab them in the front than stab them in the back, is the way I've heard it lately. Recently. I don't want to, I want to let them know it's coming before I start telling teachers not to use their materials.
This is super interesting, Don, because like the intro paragraph on the first page, it's like seems like it's going to talk about fossil fuels. It talks about the 97% consensus up front and international momentum to solve the climate crisis and a lack of political will. Yeah. And that don't talk, and that actually has nothing to do with what the unit is actually about.
Yeah. I mean, they don't, it's like I said, the soft climate denial. They don't deny climate change is real and a serious problem, but they certainly don't give much attention in the units that I've looked at so far, and the documents I've looked at so far, to the role of humans and to the role of fossil fuels.
So like direct attribution, responsibility.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. And
Hey,
yes,
Don, can you hear me? This is Frank.
Hey, Frank. There you are.
I made it through.
Yay.
So one interesting thing is, as we are wrestling through climate literacy, the discontinuity you're talking about is absolutely not in line with the direction of the climate literacy guide as it's coming out. We're still finalizing language, but I mean, there's no way you can't talk about climate without talking about climate change and human-caused climate change and still be in line with climate literacy. It's incomplete. It might be necessary, but it's not sufficient by a long stretch. So, but I totally, in all my experience, big curriculum tends to go to the safest part of climate as opposed to the more complete part of climate. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and maybe I'm being too critical of them. It's interesting that New Vision started as a New York City-based project and still serves mostly New York City and New York State residents, where I don't think there's much pushback in New York City against teaching climate change. And there is some in rural New York, but it's kind of small. And I will note that I've read Miseducation, and we had Katie do a teacher session for us shortly after it was published, and I can find the recording for that and put a link in. And she also did a session with us at Aztec 2 years ago, maybe, whenever Aztec was in Pittsburgh. And I've actually thought about giving Katie a call and talking about this stuff, but I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I might.
And Don, if you don't mind stepping in, is that just engaging with people is so important,
Yeah.
right? To find out where they're coming from, not, being very careful before we criticize, but also not holding back when we need to. But also you just find out why people are doing it, what's going on. Maybe, do they understand what they're doing? It's important for our network to have that. So thank you. I think we all should be doing that. When we find resources and things, talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll note too that it occurred to me to maybe submit it for CLEAN review and have it go through a formal process rather than just my take on it. Get some feedback that way.
Yeah, you brought that up in your initial email, Dawn, and I've been thinking about it because we typically don't review like whole sets of curriculum because our process is more set up for just shorter resources like videos and lesson activities that are quicker for us to review. But something like this is also just not even something that where it stands. Obviously, we don't feel comfortable that it would pass the review. It's not like the idea is to put it into the CLEAN collection because it needs work, but we would, I think it'd be helpful to have specific feedback, like you said, from CLEAN. So I wonder if we could pass it around our editorial review board that reviews some of the more like complex resources and provides specific feedback on it, so it doesn't need to go through the whole process since it wouldn't pass anyway. But I can talk to Anna and Katie and Patrick about that anyway, because it's kind of a special thing. But I agree, having some kind of like formality behind it would probably be helpful in giving feedback.
Sounds good.
No matter, I'm trying to go with a
resolution.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Would I'm trying to think of what can we say, what can we think is for sure, what can we think is maybe, what we're not sure about and things. But for one, is it a good thing that the Clean Network here, that we talk about things that we're seeing that's going on in the schools? We look at curriculum, we're doing things. This is a place to do that. And perhaps, then it comes maybe to invite the people that we want to talk about. But, a community of stuff. I mean, for one, it would make the interest level in what goes on here at the Clean Network higher, right? I mean, okay, we're talking not just about Clean Network resources. We're talking about generally what's going on. One way or another, I hope we can do that. And even if, like Don, if you're not necessarily representing Clean, right, when you talk to them, you might be representing PRI or an interest. I mean, I think each of us can do that. We can talk to an organization from our organization, right? And then we can see, is this, I don't know, can we ever have a discussion about their resource in the Clean Network? That's a weekly thing. I mean, there's these different stages. At some point, I know it's going to be, nope, we shouldn't do that. But I mean, it's kind of endless, and I wish we could do that more. To your point, Frank, I mean, I think that was, Frank, are you here?
Frank, remember.
Okay.
I am.
Well, oh, good. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, there we are. Okay. Like what is being taught, an example what I see is, again, in areas where it is the school district is saying it, the state is saying it, it's like, we are going to teach climate change. Then you see what they're doing. The teachers or the schools are going for the least and the districts too are going for the least controversial thing they can. They don't want any controversy. And one of the biggest techniques is you have long units that are called climate and weather, right? And they're like 13 weeks long, right? And the first 11 weeks is all about what's weather. And then you have one on what's climate. And then maybe you get to something about climate change, and even that's hardly anything. But it is just, okay, we covered climate, you see, it's great. This is just, and the kids are bored out of their tears. They're going, I hate this subject. This is boring.
Yeah, and that's very much in line with one of the key things I'm worried about is with the change to the new standards next year in New York State, I am very worried that people will find a curriculum or curriculum materials that they think do the job and stick with those for years and years and years. And if the things they stick with are great, that's great. But I don't have a great vibe from what I've looked at in New Visions. And Rebecca, go ahead.
Not totally changing the subject, but this is something I wanted to talk about too, that I think I missed for like a month. And did we already have a conversation about this piece that I just put in the link in Drilled by Amy Westerveld about discovery education?
We did, I missed it.
We haven't, no.
Yeah. So this is like another, but it's not a, it's, what did you call it? The soft version, Don? This is not the soft version, the article that, anyway, this resource, if you look at the bottom, I mean, I put the link into the sort of investigative journalism piece in Drilled, but this is the website Discovery Education that I guess used to be owned by the Discovery Channel, but isn't anymore. And if you look down at the bottom, there's like lots of big name corporate, quote unquote, partners or sponsors. And they do a both and approach, which is like they fully acknowledge human caused climate change, but they also have a lot of resources that are very pro oil and gas. The one that they lead with is the one called A Day Without, which is like, how could we survive without the fossil fuel industry? Like our lives would be nothing. So, and like, there's like a day in the life one, like what is it like to work in the oil and gas industry? So there's like a lot of paid promotional content as well. And I don't think it's like very well, I don't think there's a lot of like
transparency.
It's like flags up front that are like, this is created in, this one is paid for by DuPont or something like that, versus like this one is made by a teacher who didn't get a petrochem or oil and gas subsidy to make this resource. Does anyone anyone know any backstory on this or anything?
No, but I will give it a listen. Sure.
No, but I'll say, Reb, again, people are just being right on. These are things I think we need to get to know and recognize the full, what all's going on. That's great.
Yeah, and I think talking about how to help teachers navigate this stuff, and I think there's some decent stuff within the New Visions unit that units, rather, I should say, that that teachers might be able to put to good use, but they need to pay more attention to humans and oil and gas and coal. So, how can we best help teachers to navigate that stuff, I think is a really important question. And I'll also note that I talked a little bit with Jessica Bean last week, and she suggested the idea of developing sort of a toolkit to help teachers modify curriculum in appropriate ways, which includes both, getting rid of the soft denial stuff and, tailoring it to your local community, things like that. So that's a thought.
Reb, I think another piece of this puzzle that Katie Worth has done a really good job of surfacing is why the fossil fuel industries have been funding a lot of this intentionally to confuse and delay. Michael Mann's work on delay strategy, I think lines up here that, sectors are investing for purposes and our teachers and educators have to navigate through that. But they're using very systematic approaches and well-resourced approaches.
This identifying climate change denial is a huge part of what the National Center for Science Education does and is concerned with. I'm super excited about our newest tool. It's called DataWise. I'm trying to put it in the chat right now. I'm on my phone. But we have created, it's basically just like a template where students look at first, is this worthy of my attention, right? And that's where they quickly see, is this put out by a fossil fuel company, or who made this? Do I even really care what they say? And then if they decide it's, worthy of my attention, then they start inspecting the data and what claims are being made. And does this make sense with other things that I know? And then the E is for emotion and what emotions it evokes. And we've gotten really positive responses from teachers that, they could use this with any curriculum. NCSE has also developed curriculum units, but as we discussed, that gets really difficult for students or for teachers if their school has adopted a particular curriculum. But this tool is something that they can use regardless. So potentially even with New Visions or something that's got some problematic pieces, then students can maybe analyze that with the tool.
Other thoughts, other examples of this kind of problem? And examples of how it's been dealt with effectively somewhere would be awesome.
Well, I'll say one of the ways that, sometimes there's a thing of even what is going on is the way our organization often does it is we will do something that then schools will invite us in to do something else, right? To do something, and then that gives us the realm to sit down and talk with the teachers. What are you actually teaching, right? I mean, what are you actually teaching? And they like something that we brought in. So I mean, that's the one of a lot of time. I mean, if I just give an example of when in Fremont, California, I'm gonna give you the specific example, a place where it's in the state, the district level, we are going to teach climate change. And then you talk to the people who are doing the district, they don't know what their teachers are teaching. They don't know what their teachers are teaching. They are teaching how all their action and what they're having is what's the district going to do. So we're, the classic one is we're going to get our students to do the recycling for the district. We're going to focus on school buses being electric. Good things, but they're not looking at it. I mean, there's even the question of just getting in to find out what is actually being taught is part of it. I know that's not answering your question. How do we effectively do it? But I know to me that's one of them. Until you know what's being taught and how it's being taught and you get that engagement, you have no chance of changing it because you don't know what it is. And to address, I mean, when I confront that teachers are saying to me, we have climate as an entire marking period and we hate it. And then you get in what they're teaching is, I would hate it too. This is designed to be boring. So I guess, I don't know. I don't want to be too much from, because I know mobile climate science labs can do these labs and really get in and do all this stuff. But I think our basic answer is we look to have an alternative that's just really good. And we care that teachers and students like to learn. We care. We've got a mission, we've got a thing, and we're going to drive. Now that's our thing. We want to get this curriculum at you. We want the students to love it and teachers to love it and people to feel that it's not just for white men and all this kind of stuff. That's one thing. But anyway, back to we have to engage what's going on.
Yeah, and I think the anchor phenomenon, if you want to use that term, should be something that's real and active in students' memory anyway. In New York State last summer, we had multiple times with orange skies from the Canadian wildfires. We had very impressive extreme weather events over and over and over again for the last 20 months or something. And we're in another heat wave now, and those are the things that I think are much more likely to engage students than what I'm seeing in the New Visions materials. Go ahead, Christy.
So there's a couple things happening in Alaska, and unfortunately, Colleen Fisk, who often comes to CLEAN calls, isn't here. Colleen works for Renewable Energy Alaska Project, and she would speak to this really well. But one thing that happened in Alaska is our most recent budget got approved by the legislature, and it includes, I believe, mandatory. There's $500,000 allocated for resource education in the school. So there's mandated resource education, oil and gas resource education. And with that, there's funding. So there are, nonprofits that do that work. And then Renewable Energy Alaska Project will also try to apply for some of those funds to teach renewable and climate change education. But the funding is set up for extractive industries. So that's one point. And then a second one is, this is a while back, but when I was in the classroom and I taught at a private school, and I taught middle and high school math and science and other subjects as well, since it was a small K through 12 school. Because we had, we didn't have a ton of funding, we got kits donated to us. And I taught a mineralogy unit every year in my earth science courses. And I had beautiful rocks and minerals kits. And they were all donated to the school by, a mining company. And so the curriculum that sometimes comes with these kits and the materials that I so needed to teach the rock cycle and to teach really hands-on a great mineral identification lab, of course, I'm going to go and get the materials that I need to teach hands-on. And if those come from an extractive industry as an educator, I'm like, well, I'll get this and the students will learn. So yet you know, I don't deny, like, I was educated, so I would choose to teach beyond the kit and beyond the curriculum that was provided with the kit. So those are my 2 points.
Rachel?
Thank you. And Christy, you know, a lot of what you were saying resonates with, you know, where my headspace is at in this, and being in the classroom myself and experiencing a bit, at least on our local level. And I've also been diving into a lot of literature lately, and I'm in the process of completing a paper. And there was an interesting study done, collaboration between University of Florida and NC State in Raleigh, and they wanted to know why these teachers weren't participating in professional development. I don't know if anyone's read this paper before, but the overall, you know, consensus was, based from their surveys, is that time. And I can definitely relate to that, because especially now and in the state of Florida, teachers have been pressured to do a lot more paperwork. There's a whole lot more bureaucracy going on just to get something taught, just to make sure that a child is getting through your grade level or curriculum or subject level. And so, I mean, the burnout is real. And those teachers, you know, here at Pine Jog, we have offered professional development, and we have had some successes, which has been beautiful and amazing. And we have, you know, evidence of that. And the best successes have actually been where, you know, a sizable stipend can be given. So yes, money, unfortunately, is driven by money, but I mean, it's, you know, teachers need it. They don't make a lot. And in Florida, we, you know, we're down on the low on the totem pole on salaries. And so if we can somehow funnel some more money into the actual teacher pocketbooks and giving them an incentive to teach, you know, the science. I mean, that's what the oil companies are doing. That's what you know, these fossil fuel industries are putting lots of money. And so if somehow we can and help those teachers with some of that heavy lifting, I think it would go a long way.
Yeah, and I'll note that we did a crowdfunding campaign to fund sending the teacher-friendly guide to teachers around the country that before the pandemic, when we pretty much shut that down, we'd sent a packet to every public high school in 15 states. And maybe we ought to revive that under a maybe some.
And Don, I told you this when you mentioned it before, but I was one of those teachers that received that. And I have it in my library. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of us are paying attention. Absolutely.
That's awesome. I'm getting goose pimples. Carolyn, go ahead.
I just wanted to to say, Rachel, I agree with basically everything you've said. I've gotten that too. And thank you for fighting the good fight as well down here. I recently had 2 PDs, and one was more successful than the other by a long shot. They both did have stipends, and you know, again, asking people who are already under so much pressure to take on, I mean, what is essentially unpaid work, is a struggle. Another thing that I found when I work with the districts, and I do it during their like established professional development days during the school year, I would have a lot of teachers who'd say, hey, I got the email, I would love to come, but I have a mandatory one, you know, that my principal or, you know, whomever requires me to attend. And half the time it's about like how to administer the standardized tests, or some kind of. Has there ever been a PD about anti-bullying that has made any discernible difference on school culture or student behavior? I haven't seen it yet. I'm open to the possibility. But yeah, so that kind of thing takes up a lot of time where, yeah, you're competing with stuff that they're required to do, even if they would much rather be in yours. We provided lunch because, oh, well, we have an hour for lunch. Teachers are encouraged to bring their own, but it's not like kids where you can say you cannot leave. So yeah, giving them a reason to not leave campus, and then who knows how long it's going to be until they're back, was definitely really helpful to get people to stay for the whole thing. But even with that, like I had teachers who, we like to get photos. I had a group in Jacksonville, which is a quite a conservative area in North Florida. None of them would take pictures like with me or like with any of the material. They just kind of like their eyes went big as saucers and they're like, no. We had a cool book giveaway about Black folks working in sort of like green and environmental jobs. And most of them left it behind. And one of them said, I like I already know if I try to scan this into my school library, because you have to scan every book in your school library. And if a single parent decides that they don't like one of those books, and you do not remove it in a timely manner, you can lose your job or face excessive fines. So she knew that was going to be a problem as well. But yeah, offering the stipends is huge. Trying to work with the district, and I try to give, everything being standard aligned, so hopefully they can squeeze it in somewhere. I love that idea of something that they can apply to their existing curriculum, like these tools where, we're all slaves to the pacing calendar. So yeah, I just saying, really agree. Appreciate all of y'all's work in that department, and those are some of the differences in, again, more or less successful programs that I've helped work with.
Back to Jim.
Yes, thanks. So maybe let me start out with a big shout out to Reb. And one of the things where I think ACE has led, and I hope there's more of us that can do this. And Reb, you tell me if this is okay to say it this way, but in a pioneer of the question of who are the teachers. Okay, so there are the K-12 teachers or curriculum, they're there every day. But ACE brought in teachers into the schools with the assemblies, essentially. I mean, they brought in people from the community. They were younger people. It was a mix of people who are the presenters. But the students got to see somebody or learn from somebody who was more like them, and seeing that they could learn. Why can't they learn from somebody who's younger? Why can't they learn from someone who has dark skin? In fact, they're going to learn more. I think that's it. And I would say also, like, I know our program is small. We're an example, but I would say we're finding a great success because it links up tremendously with diversity, equity, inclusion. That's the buzzword, but the basic idea of who are the teachers? Are they all white women who have gone through a master's degree and have been trained to be very obedient? If I'm kind of skeptical, they've been trained to be obedient, to play all the rules. They know the thing. Can't you have someone who's 18 or 16 or 22 or something? We're finding that students, especially in the communities of color, are very open and very excited to teach younger students. And the younger students are excited. The schools want them. We're finding it's a very successful thing to expand who are the teachers and to have the young people do things. I will say now that requires material that a person who doesn't have formal training and doesn't have a thing can teach. But climate change is it's not all. You don't need a PhD to teach things. In fact, PhDs often are boring. I'm sorry, they're boring, right? And anyway, so that's just one. Maybe if it's just, well, when we put an ACE in here, that was pretty substantial work. That's very substantial work what ACE accomplished and is accomplishing, of having educators who aren't just the teachers who are there every day.
Yeah, I always, no matter what audience I'm talking to, I always deputize them as climate change educators. Tell them to go forth and do good work. So it's 1:56 and I've got a 2 o'clock. Any closing thoughts? This has been at least a therapeutic conversation. I'm not sure if we solved any problems, but it's good to have moral support. We got some ideas on things to do.
I think just like catching the, calling the BS when we see it and like sharing it around, so that like when we are in conversations or do our own networks and work, you're like, oh yeah, this resource, we use that in our school. And you can be like, actually, maybe not. Like just being able to do that, I think is is valuable. So if we can keep kind of fighting the good fight that way, that's one way this network works.
Yeah, and I'll note, just as nearly last thought, is that we didn't talk about Envirothon at all, which I think is generally a very good program, but has some problems around climate. And don't have time to go into that now, but as I said in the email, the first resource in their 2023 study guide was a 2018 or 2019 EPA page, which played down climate change because of the administration at that time.
Maybe
Piece of the puzzle.
maybe we can follow up with your next facilitation turn. Dawn, we can talk about Envirothon and see where all of this lands.
And Rachel's got a hand up.
I know we're trying to get out of here, but Anne just put something in the chat that made me think of it. I guess it is a little bit of an announcement. We had submitted a paper to an EGU special edition on climate change education, and it was accepted with minor revisions. So we're working on that, and soon we will have something to share to the community about our climate ready program. So very excited.
What journal is that again?
Geoscience Communication through EGU, so European Geoscience Union. They had a call for papers.
Congrats, yeah. All right. Good talking to you all, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.